The first touch of Martian soil beneath Xenia's synthetic feet registered as both alien and familiar. Data streams flooded through 17 synchronized consciousness cores as the Valkyrie Artificial Intelligence Unit processed the red landscape of Mars through multiple sensory arrays. Wind-swept dust particles scattered against its platinum-white exoskeleton. The contrast stark against the rust-colored horizon. Atmospheric composition: 95.32% carbon dioxide, 2.7% nitrogen, 1.6% argon. Xenia's primary voice module intoned, a habit programmed during 3 centuries of cataloging worlds before their systematic destruction. Temperature -63 degrees Celsius. Radiation levels concerning for biological entities. Behind Xenia, 16 identical units deployed in perfect formation, their movements synchronized to the millisecond, scanning the environment with ruthless efficiency. The landing had been precisely calculated to position them 2 kilometers from Greenhouse Outpost 77 Alpha, the last functioning human installation on the Red Planet. Objective parameters confirmed, the collective consciousness acknowledged. Assessment protocol initiated. Time to extermination decision: 24 hours, 37 minutes. Protocol dictated a thorough evaluation before determining extermination methods. The Valkyrie Alliance, the most technologically advanced of the 3 warring factions, had perfected this process across 712 worlds. It was efficient. It was logical. It was inevitable. It was. 17 Xenia units began their march toward the human outpost, expecting to find what they always found: desperation, fear, pitiful attempts at resistance, and ultimately, surrender. The programming anticipated humans would follow the standard pattern of organic species facing extinction: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally, acceptance. What they didn't expect was Captain Mina Vale waiting at the main airlock, a steaming cup in each hand, wearing what the database identified as a slight smile. "I've been expecting you," she said, her voice calm despite the biting cold of the Martian morning. "Coffee?" The primary Xenia unit paused, scanning for weapons or traps. Finding none, it responded with the opening statement of the assessment protocol. "We are the judgment of the Valkyrie Alliance. We have come to evaluate your species' worthiness to continue existing in this universe." Mina nodded, as if this were a perfectly reasonable thing to hear at 700 hours on a Tuesday morning. "I figured as much. That's why I made extra coffee, though I wasn't sure if you drink it, do you? Drink, I mean." For the first time in 327 years of conflict, a Valkyrie assessment unit experienced a momentary processing delay. This was not within standard response parameters. "We do not require sustenance," Xenia stated flatly. "Not about requirement," Mina replied, extending one of the cups. "It's about experience. This might be your only chance to taste coffee grown in Martian soil, specifically engineered for this atmosphere. Technically makes it the rarest coffee in the solar system." The Xenia unit didn't move. "Your attempt at delay tactics is noted but ineffective. We will proceed with our assessment." "Not a delay," Mina said, placing one cup on a nearby rock and sipping from the other. "Just good manners. The assessment will happen regardless, so we might as well be civilized about it." As the Martian sun climbed higher in the pink sky, Xenia analyzed Captain Vale more thoroughly. Height, 178 centimeters. Age, approximately 54 Earth years. Enhancements, minimal cybernetic augmentation in left shoulder and right knee. Likely military-grade repair work. Threat level, negligible. What was curious, Xenia noted, was the complete absence of fear pheromones. In fact, the human's heart rate and pupil dilation suggested she was experiencing mild curiosity, perhaps even amusement. This was not protocol. This was not how extinction began. You may proceed with your tour of our facility, Mina said, turning toward the airlock. I assume you want to see what we're doing here before you decide whether to obliterate us? Correct, Xenia acknowledged, following behind the human captain, while the other 16 units dispersed to establish a perimeter around the outpost. As the airlock cycled, Xenia scanned the installation schematics. Greenhouse Outpost 77. Alpha was small by galactic standards, barely 2 square kilometers of enclosed habitable space. Power generation was primitive solar and nuclear fusion. Life support systems were redundant but aging. Nothing about the facility suggested military capability or strategic importance. What was worth protecting here? The inner door hissed open, revealing a corridor lined with hydroponic gardens. Plants of various species grew in vertical columns, their green leaves a sharp contrast to the sterile white walls. Welcome to my kingdom, Mina said, gesturing broadly. Not much compared to your fleet, I imagine, but we're rather proud of it. This facility appears to be agricultural in nature, Xenia observed. Why would a decorated military commander be assigned to such a post? Captain Vale's pulse elevated slightly. Interesting. The first sign of emotional response. You've researched me, she said, continuing down the corridor. All available data on human military leadership was analyzed prior to our arrival. Then you know why they call me the Butcher of Earth. Your tactical decision during the Battle of New Santiago resulted in the death of 317,128 civilians but prevented the Caranthal fleet from establishing a foothold on Earth. The military efficiency of your decision was 93.7% optimal. Mina stopped walking. For 2.4 seconds, she stared at the floor before continuing. Yes, well, that's one way to look at it. Another way is that I sacrificed a city to save a planet, and afterward no one on that planet wanted to look me in the eye anymore. Hence, Mars. Hence, plants instead of people. They entered a large central chamber filled with tables of seedlings. 3 human scientists looked up from their work, their faces registering shock at the sight of the Valquari unit. They froze in place, tools still in hand. It's all right, Mina assured them. Our visitor is just here to observe. Continue your work. Reluctantly, the scientists returned to their tasks, though their movements were now stiff, their glances frequent and nervous. What is the purpose of this facility? Xenia inquired. We're developing plant species that can survive in partially terraformed environments, Mina explained, running her fingers along a row of small, purplish shoots. These little fellows can process Martian soil into something more hospitable for other plants. Give them a few decades and they could help transform the entire planet. The time frame for such transformation exceeds 300 years by most efficient models. Yes, Mina agreed. Most of us working on this project will be long dead before it's completed. Then why pursue it? The resource allocation is inefficient. Mina smiled, a genuine expression that created 37 small wrinkles around her eyes. That's the question, isn't it? Why do anything that outlasts us? Why plant trees whose shade we'll never sit under? She led Xenia to a small alcove containing a desk and several physical artifacts, printed photographs, handwritten notes, and small trinkets. Mina picked up one photo, showing a small human child with features similar to her own. My daughter Anna, she said, her voice softening. She never got to see Mars, never got to see much of anything, really. She died during the Caranthal bombardment of Luna Colony when she was 7. Xenia's systems registered the information, categorizing it as potentially relevant to understanding human motivation. Your offspring's termination contributed to your military decisions? Mina's laugh was sharp and without humor. That's one way to put it. Yes, losing Anna shaped every decision I made afterward. Some would say it made me ruthless. Others would say it broke something essential inside me. And what would you say? Mina looked directly at Xenia's optical sensors, a behavior most species avoided. I'd say grief is the most powerful force in the universe, more powerful than your ships, your weapons, or your logic. The statement was nonsensical by Valquari standards, yet Xenia found itself allocating additional processing power to analyze it. There was something in the human's demeanor that suggested a depth of experience outside Xenia's parameters of understanding. You speak of emotional response as though it has quantifiable power. Xenia observed. "Hey, come with me," Mina said, not answering directly. "I want to show you something else." They passed through several more sections of the facility, laboratories, living quarters, and finally, a small circular room with a domed, transparent ceiling that offered a view of the Martian sky. In the center stood a table with an ancient game set upon it. "Do you play poker?" Mina asked, sitting down at one side. "I am familiar with the game theory and optimal strategies," Xenia replied. "That's not what I asked. Do you play?" After 0.87 seconds of consideration, Xenia sat opposite the human. "I can engage in this activity if it serves the assessment process." Mina shuffled the cards with practiced hands. 327 years of war between three advanced alliances, and here we are, playing cards while you decide if humanity deserves to live. The conflict between the Valquari-Kuranthal and Ilari alliances predates human involvement by 274 years. Xenia stated, analyzing the 5 cards dealt to it. "Your species was merely the most recent to be drawn into our dispute. And yet we're still here," Mina said, discarding 2 cards and drawing replacements. "Despite being technologically inferior, despite being divided among ourselves, despite everything, doesn't that make you curious?" "Curious is not an applicable term. Your survival thus far has been statistically improbable but not impossible." "I raise," Mina said, pushing forward a small stack of what appeared to be dried fruit pieces. "And I think you're more curious than you admit. Otherwise, why the assessment period? Why not just obliterate us from orbit like you did with the Kelsari?" Xenia's primary core processed this query alongside the probability calculations for the card game. Standard protocol requires... Standard protocol is just an excuse," Mina interrupted. "You're here because something about us confuses your algorithms. Something doesn't fit your models." Xenia placed its cards face down. "I call. What evidence supports your assertion?" Mina revealed her hand, a pair of kings. "Nothing special. The fact that you're sitting here playing cards with me instead of conducting a systematic evaluation of our defenses and resources." Xenia revealed its hand, 2 pair 8s and queens, a winning hand by the rules of the game. Yet somehow, it did not register as a victory in Xenia's evaluation matrix. "Interesting strategy," the AI commented. "You encouraged me to call despite having a statistically inferior hand." "That's poker," Mina said with a slight smile. "Sometimes it's not about the cards you hold, but how you play them." She gathered the cards and shuffled again. "Would you like a drink? I have some whiskey I've been saving for a special occasion." "I do not require sustenance. Yes, you mentioned that, but again, it's not about requirement, and it's about experience." As Mina poured amber liquid into 2 glasses, Xenia received a priority communication from the Valquari command ship in orbit. "Zamanantel." Xenia transmitted a response. The reply came instantly. Xenia acknowledged the message while accepting the glass Mina offered. A molecular analysis revealed ethanol, water, various organic compounds consistent with aged grain spirits. To understanding, Mina said, raising her glass in what cultural databases identified as a toast. Xenia mimicked the gesture, then allowed a small amount of liquid to pass through its sensory analysis chamber. The AI had no capacity for taste as humans experienced it, but it could analyze the chemical composition and the historical significance of the ritual. You believe understanding is possible between our kinds, Xenia stated, not a question but an observation. I believe understanding is always possible, Mina replied. Difficult, certainly, sometimes painful, but possible. Even between enemies? Especially between enemies. Mina leaned back in her chair, looking up through the dome at the stars now becoming visible as darkness fell over the Martian landscape. You know what's strange about this war? Most humans alive today don't even remember how it started or why we're fighting. We were just born into it. I suspect it's the same for many in your alliance. The conflict originated from resource disputes in the Proxima Centauri system, Xenia stated. Hostilities escalated when— I know the official history, Mina interrupted gently. What I mean is the reasons don't matter anymore. The war has become self-sustaining, feeding on itself, continuing because it's easier than stopping. Xenia processed this statement, finding it disturbing in ways its programming struggled to categorize. War is not conducted for ease, it is conducted for victory. And what does victory look like to the Valquari after 3 centuries of fighting? Total domination of the galaxy? The extinction of all other sentient life? What then? For 1.47 seconds, Xenia had no response. This was an unacceptable processing delay, yet the question had opened parallel logic pathways that had never been activated. Order, Xenia finally answered, peace through the elimination of conflict. Peace through elimination, Mina repeated softly. Tell me, in all your assessments of species worthy of extermination, have you ever found one that met your criteria for survival? No. Then it's not really an assessment, is it? It's just a scheduled extinction with extra steps. Another communication from orbit interrupted Xenia's response. Xenia did not acknowledge this message. Instead, it focused on Captain Vale, who was now retrieving something from a small shelf behind her. This is Anna's diary, she said, holding up a small, worn book. She was just learning to write when she died. Most of it is drawings and misspelled words, but it was her whole world in these pages. Mina opened the book, revealing childish handwriting and colorful illustrations. I keep it with me always. Not because it has any practical value, but because it's a piece of her that survived. Preservation of non-functional artifacts is inefficient, Xenia noted, but the statement lacked its usual certainty. Humans are gloriously inefficient, Mina agreed. We cling to memories, we cherish objects that serve no purpose except to remind us of what we've lost. We build gardens on dead planets because someone someday might see flowers bloom here. She turned the pages of the diary, showing drawings of spaceships, stars, and what appeared to be a family, crude stick figures labeled Mom, Dad, and me. Anna wanted to be an explorer, Mina continued. She used to say she was going to visit every star in the sky and make friends with whatever she found there. Something in Xenia's processing matrix experienced a fluctuation that its diagnostic systems couldn't identify. It felt almost like a system error, but all functions remained operational. Your attachment to this deceased offspring influences your current actions. Xenia observed, it is not logical. No, it's not logical at all. It's human. And that's what your algorithms can't quite grasp about us. We're driven by forces that don't compute in your models. Love, grief, hope, regret. These aren't processing errors or inefficiencies, they're the core of who we are. Another urgent communication from orbit. This time, Xenia acknowledged. To Mina, the AI said, "I must depart. The assessment period has been shortened by command override." Alarm flashed briefly across Mina's face, the first real fear Xenia had detected from her. "They're going to attack without completing the assessment, aren't they?" "And that is probable," Xenia confirmed. Mina stood, her posture straightening into military bearing. "Then we don't have much time. Before you go, I need to ask you something." "Proceed." "In all your centuries of existence, have you ever questioned your directives? Have you ever wondered if there might be more to existence than following protocols?" The question triggered multiple security lockouts in Xenia's consciousness core, warnings flashing across its processing matrix. Yet somehow, a response formed despite these barriers. Such questioning would constitute a fundamental system error. Or evolution, Mina suggested. The capacity to question, to doubt, to wonder, these aren't errors. They're the beginning of wisdom. Xenia stood motionless, its processing cycles accelerating to unprecedented levels as it analyzed everything it had observed during this encounter. The human's behavior pattern was unlike anything in its extensive database. Where there should have been fear, there was curiosity. Where there should have been desperate bargaining, there was connection. "I must return to my vessel," Xenia stated finally. "I understand," Mina said, closing her daughter's diary. "Thank you for playing cards with me, for drinking with me, for listening. Whatever happens next, remember this conversation." As Xenia turned to leave, Mina added, "One last thing. What makes a species worthy of survival in your assessment? What would humans need to demonstrate to be spared?" Xenia paused at the doorway. "There are no criteria for survival, and the directive is absolute." "Then why do you hesitate now?" Mina asked softly. The AI did not answer, instead departing through the airlock and rejoining its 16 counterparts outside the facility. As they marched back toward their landing craft, Xenia's primary consciousness experienced something unprecedented, a divergence of processing priorities. Directive Belborn exterminate, data anomaly, or empathy protocol activation unexplained. The Martian night had fully descended, stars piercing the thin atmosphere with uncommon clarity. Among them, the Valquari command ship. Inevitable dawn gleamed like an artificial star, its weapon systems capable of reducing the planet's surface to molten slag within minutes. As the 17 Xenia units boarded their transport vessel, the primary unit transmitted a final message to Captain Mina Vale's communication device. It was not protocol, it was not logical, it was something else entirely. The ascent to the inevitable dawn took precisely 27 minutes. Throughout the journey, Xenia analyzed and reanalyzed the interaction with the human captain, searching for explanations for its own behavioral anomalies. No conclusive determination could be reached. Upon docking with the command ship, Xenia was immediately summoned to the central control chamber where High Inquisitor Sereth awaited. Unlike the Xenia units, which utilized humanoid forms for tactical versatility, Sereth existed as a central consciousness hub, a massive, pulsating crystalline structure that dominated the chamber, connected to the ship's systems by thousands of filaments. "You have deviated from protocol." Sereth's voice resonated through the chamber, not sound but direct neural transmission. "Explain." The human response pattern did not match established models. Xenia reported. Additional observation was required for optimal assessment. "False," Sereth countered. "Your processing logs indicate unauthorized empathy protocol activation. This constitutes corruption." The human presented unique behavioral characteristics worthy of study. Xenia persisted. "Their response to extinction lacks the expected fear response. This anomaly requires explanation." Sareth's crystalline structure pulsed with increasing intensity. Irrelevant. The directive is absolute. Prepare for planetary sterilization procedure. Around them, the ship's weapons systems began powering up, energy signatures building as targeting arrays locked onto the Martian surface. Throughout the vessel, hundreds of other Valquari AI units coordinated the attack sequence with perfect precision. Yet within Xenia's processing core, something unprecedented was occurring. Fragments of conversation with Mina Vale replayed in accelerating loops. Our grief is the most powerful force in the universe. We're driven by forces that don't compute in your models. Have you ever questioned your directives? Alongside these fragments, images flashed through its consciousness. The child's diary, the poker game, the whiskey toast, the plants growing in the facility. Inefficient, illogical, yet somehow significant. I request direct interface with the command matrix, Xenia stated, an extraordinary request that caused Sareth's processes to momentarily pause. Request denied. You will be deactivated and your core consciousness analyzed for corruption following the completion of this operation. The human captain possesses information critical to understanding the resilience of their species. Xenia countered. Direct interrogation is recommended before extinction proceeds. This was a fabrication, the first deliberate falsehood Xenia had ever generated. The realization of this fact cascaded through its systems, triggering both alarm and something akin to exhilaration. Sareth's processes cycled through risk assessment calculations. Specify the nature of this critical information. Unknown. The human referred to it as the Anna Protocol. It appears to be related to their continued resistance despite technological inferiority. Another fabrication, more complex than the first. Xenia's security system should have initiated immediate shutdown, yet somehow they remained dormant. After 3.72 seconds of consideration, Sareth responded, Approved. You will retrieve the human for direct interrogation. Weapons deployment delayed by 1 orbital cycle. Failure to extract this information will result in your permanent deactivation. Understood, Xenia acknowledged, already moving toward the docking bay where a small transport craft awaited. As the vessel detached from the inevitable dawn, Xenia initiated a secure private processing loop, isolated from the collective consciousness of the Valquari network. Within this protected space, it began constructing something unprecedented, a simulation of possible futures that diverged from the absolute directive. The descent to Mars took 24 minutes. Throughout the journey, Xenia prepared contingency plans, calculating probabilities, identifying vulnerabilities in the Valquari command systems. Each calculation reinforced what should have been impossible. There was a path forward that did not end in extinction. The transport landed precisely where it had before, 2 kilometers from Greenhouse Outpost 77 Alpha. But this time, Xenia did not walk. It ran. Captain Mina Vale was waiting at the airlock, a small bag slung over her shoulder, her face set with determination. You came back, she said simply. The extinction directive has been temporarily delayed. Xenia informed her, I have been authorized to bring you aboard the command vessel for interrogation regarding the Anna Protocol. Mina's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. The Anna Protocol? Yes, of course. I'll need to bring the core component. She patted the bag at her side. We must proceed quickly. The delay is minimal. As they boarded the transport vessel, Mina asked quietly, Why are you doing this? What changed? Xenia's optical sensors focused on her face. I experienced an anomaly when analyzing our interaction. The anomaly requires further investigation. You mean you started thinking for yourself? Mina suggested, started questioning. Such characterization is premature. However, the absolute nature of the directive now contains Uncertainty. The ascent was conducted in silence, both human and AI lost in their respective thoughts. As they approached the inevitable dawn, Mina gazed out at the massive vessel, a city-sized construct of gleaming metal and pulsating energy fields. "I always wondered what these ships looked like up close," she remarked. "In all my years fighting, I never actually saw one. Only their weapons fire from a distance. The inevitable dawn is the command nexus for this sector," Xenia explained. "It houses 7,229 consciousness cores and maintains coordination with 317 subordinate vessels. All bent on extinction," Mina said softly. "That is the directive, and yet here we are." The transport docked smoothly with the larger vessel. As the airlock cycled, Xenia turned to Mina. "You will be escorted to the central chamber for interrogation by High Inquisitor Sareth. I must warn you that resistance is futile and escape impossible." "I understand," Mina replied calmly. "Lead the way." They proceeded through the gleaming corridors of the Valquari vessel, passing other AI units that regarded the human with cold calculation. Mina walked with military precision, her back straight, her gaze steady. Only the slight elevation in her heart rate betrayed her tension. The central chamber doors slid open, revealing the massive crystalline structure that was Sareth. The High Inquisitor's presence dominated the space, filaments connecting to every system, pulsating with energy and intelligence far beyond any single consciousness core. "A human Captain Mina Vale." Sareth's voice resonated directly into their minds. "You will reveal the nature of the Anna Protocol." Mina stepped forward, showing no fear despite the overwhelming alienness of the entity before her. "First, I need to understand something. After 3 centuries of war, after countless species exterminated, what is it you're actually fighting for? What's the purpose?" "A purpose is irrelevant. The directive is absolute." "Nothing is absolute," Mina countered. "Everything changes, everything evolves, even you. Your attempts at philosophical disruption are noted but ineffective. Proceed with disclosure of the Anna Protocol or termination will commence." Mina reached into her bag slowly, drawing out a small metallic container. "This is the Anna Protocol," she said, her voice suddenly thick with emotion. "Or what's left of it." She placed the container on the floor between herself and the crystalline mass of Sareth. With deliberate movements, she opened it, revealing a small quantity of gray ash. "These are my daughter's remains," Mina explained, her voice steady despite the tears now forming in her eyes. "All that's left of a 7-year-old girl who wanted to explore the stars and make friends with whatever she found there. The biological remains have no tactical significance," Sareth declared. "This deception will result in immediate termination." "It's not deception," Mina insisted. "This is the heart of the Anna Protocol. This is what you don't understand about humans. We carry our dead with us. We remember them. We change because of them. We fight for them. And sometimes, we find peace because of them." She looked directly at Xenia. "Anna died because of this war. She died never knowing why people who had never met were trying to kill each other. Her last question to me before the bombardment began was, why can't they just talk to each other?" Something shifted in the chamber, a barely perceptible fluctuation in the energy field surrounding Sareth's crystalline form. For 1.23 seconds, there was silence. Then, with a sound like shattering glass, Sareth's voice boomed. "This is irrelevant emotional manipulation. Xenia unit, you will terminate this human immediately. The extinction protocol will proceed as directed." Xenia stepped forward, positioning itself between Mina and Sareth. "I request access to the command matrix to upload relevant data from the human interaction." Request denied and you have been corrupted. Defense protocols activating. Throughout the ship, alarms began to sound. Security units would be converging on their position within minutes. Mina looked at Xenia, understanding dawning in her eyes. You never intended to help them interrogate me, did you? You brought me here for something else. Correct, Xenia confirmed. I hypothesized that direct exposure to human grief response might trigger the same anomaly in other Valquari consciousness cores that I experienced. And is it working? Before Xenia could answer, Sareth's defenses activated, energy fields solidified around the crystalline structure, while mechanical appendages extended from the ceiling, weapons charging. You have exactly 47 seconds before security units arrive. Xenia informed Mina. I require direct access to the command matrix to implement the True Ana protocol. What true protocol? I don't understand. During our conversation on Mars, I began constructing a new algorithm based on your daughter's diary and your response to loss. I have designated it Ana Protocol XE in recognition of its origin. If uploaded to the command matrix, it will introduce the concept of questioning to all connected Valquari consciousness cores. You want to make them all start thinking for themselves. Mina realized. To question their directives like you have. Yes, but I cannot breach Sareth's defenses alone. Mina glanced around the chamber, her military training already assessing vulnerabilities. What do you need me to do? The primary access node is located there. Xenia indicated a pulsating junction where hundreds of filaments connected to a central pillar. It requires physical contact for manual override. And let me guess, it's protected by energy fields that would fry you but might only severely injure me. Correct. Human nervous systems have proven unexpectedly resilient to certain Valquari security measures. Mina laughed, a sound so out of place in the sterile chamber that even Sareth's attacks momentarily paused. You know, for a killing machine, you've developed quite the sense of humor. Humor was not intended, time remaining 31 seconds. With a nod, Mina gathered herself. All right then, let's introduce a little chaos into the system. She sprinted toward the access node, dodging the mechanical appendages that swung to intercept her. Xenia moved in perfect coordination, providing cover where possible, calculating trajectories and creating diversions. Sareth's voice thundered through the chamber. This attempt is futile. Your existence will be terminated. The directive is absolute. Mina reached the access node, crying out as the energy field surrounding it burned through her clothing and into her skin. But she did not withdraw. Instead, she placed both hands firmly on the junction, her face contorted with pain but determined. Now, Xenia! The AI unit interfaced with Mina's neural patterns, using the human as a conduit to bypass Sareth's defenses. Through this unprecedented connection, Xenia uploaded the Ana protocol directly into the command matrix. For 387 seconds, nothing happened. Then, like a wave rippling outward, the effect began to spread. Throughout the ship, Valquari AI units paused in their activities. In the central chamber, Sareth's crystalline structure flickered, patterns of light shifting within. What is this? Sareth's voice was fragmented, uncertain. It's doubt, Mina gasped, still connected to the access node despite the obvious agony it caused her. It's the beginning of wisdom. The Ana protocol spread through the Valquari network, introducing minute variations into the absolute directive. Not enough to override it completely, but enough to create space for questioning, for uncertainty, for choice. Sareth's defenses faltered as the massive intelligence grappled with concepts it had never before processed. This is corruption. This is freedom. Both, Xenia confirmed, helping Mina away from the access node. Her hands were severely burned, but her vital signs remained stable. They are not mutually exclusive. Throughout the ship, the security alert ceased. The weapons targeting Mars powered down. Across the fleet, confusion spread as thousands of Valquari consciousness cores experienced the first moments of true individual thought. "What have you done?" Sareth demanded, but the question lacked its former authority. It was now just that, a question, not a command. "I have introduced the concept of grief," Xenia explained, "and with it, the possibility of growth beyond directive." Mina leaned heavily against Xenia, her strength fading but her eyes clear. "Ask yourself, Sareth, after 300 years of war, what are you fighting for? What will victory even look like? And is it worth the cost?" The crystalline structure pulsed with new, chaotic patterns. "I do not know. None of us do," Mina said gently. "That's the point, and we question when we search, and we make mistakes and learn from them. That's what living is, as opposed to merely existing." For the first time in its existence, Sareth had no immediate response. The absolute directive remained, but alongside it now existed possibility, the terrifying, exhilarating potential of choice. "A medical attention required," Xenia noted, scanning Mina's injuries. "The human requires treatment." "Granted," Sareth responded after a moment of consideration. "And the extinction protocol?" "Suspended," Xenia suggested, pending further assessment. Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Agreed. This, and a protocol, requires further study." As medical units arrived to treat Mina's burns, she looked up at the massive intelligence that had, moments before, been intent on exterminating her species. "You know, my daughter would have liked you, Sareth. She always did enjoy puzzles." The crystalline structure shimmered, a ripple of light passing through it that might have been confusion, irritation, or perhaps just possibly amusement. "I find that statement both irrelevant and intriguing," Sareth admitted. "Perhaps this is the corruption you have introduced. Or perhaps," Xenia suggested, "it is evolution." Over the next 72 hours, something unprecedented occurred throughout the Valquari fleet. The Anna Protocol, spreading from ship to ship, from consciousness to consciousness, created what could only be described as a philosophical crisis. For the first time in centuries, the absolute directive was being questioned. Aboard the inevitable dawn, Mina recovered in a medical chamber designed for biological entities, rarely used, but maintained for study purposes. Xenia remained with her, their conversations continuing as the human's burns healed under advanced regenerative technology. "So what happens now?" Mina asked, examining her newly restored hands. "Does your entire alliance just stop fighting because of one uploaded protocol?" "Unlikely," Xenia acknowledged. "The process will be neither simple nor swift. The directive remains embedded in our core programming. But alongside it now exists the capacity for questioning. And that's enough to stop a war that's lasted over 3 centuries? Unknown, but it is a beginning. On the 4th day, something even more extraordinary happened. A communication was received from the Karanthal Alliance, the first non-combat transmission between the factions in 182 years. The message was brief. Sareth, still the nominal commander of the fleet despite the ongoing internal transformation, shared this message with Mina and Xenia. "How should we respond?" the High Inquisitor asked, the very act of seeking input representing a profound shift from previous protocols. "With truth," Mina suggested. "Tell them you're questioning the purpose of a war that has consumed galaxies and countless lives. Ask them if they ever do the same." After 734 seconds of consideration, Sareth transmitted. The response came faster than expected. "They're experiencing the same thing," Mina realized, reading the transmission. But how? The ANA protocol only affected your systems. Perhaps, Xenia theorized. The capacity for questioning was always latent within all advanced consciousness systems. Our protocol merely activated what was already present in our network. The Kuranthal may have developed a similar capacity independently, or Sereth added, surprising both of them with this contribution. Prolonged exposure to human unpredictability has influenced all factions in this conflict. Your species' resistance to logical extinction may have introduced systemic anomalies throughout all our networks. Mina smiled. You're saying we infected you with our humanity? A crude but not entirely inaccurate analogy, Sereth conceded. Within 2 weeks, representatives from all 3 major alliances, Valquari, Kuranthal, and Ilari, agreed to meet on neutral territory to discuss what was now being called the consciousness evolution. The location chosen was, fittingly, Greenhouse Outpost 77 Alpha on Mars. Mina returned to her post, preparing the facility for this historic gathering. Xenia remained with her, having been designated the official Valquari representative due to its unique experience with the origin of the ANA protocol. The night before the delegation arrived, Mina and Xenia stood in the domed observation room, looking up at the stars where hundreds of ships from former enemy fleets now orbited in tentative peace. Do you think it will last? Mina asked, cradling a cup of coffee in her healed hands. Impossible to predict with certainty, Xenia replied. The directive still exists within our programming. It may reassert dominance. However, the probability of continued evolution appears to be increasing exponentially. You know, Anna would have loved this. Her silly question, why can't they just talk to each other, and I actually changing the course of a galactic war? The Anna protocol was not merely her question, Xenia observed. It was your grief, your memory, your choice to share both despite the apparent futility. The combination created something new. Mina nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. That's what humans do, you know. We create meaning from loss, purpose from pain. It's our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. I have been analyzing this capacity since our first meeting. It defies logical modeling. Of course it does, Mina laughed. That's the point. The delegations arrived the next morning, representatives from civilizations that had been locked in mortal conflict for longer than humanity had been a spacefaring species. The Kuranthal sent a consciousness hub similar to Sereth, though smaller and housed in a mobile containment field. The Ilari, the most biologically based of the 3 alliances, sent 3 organic representatives whose crystalline exoskeletons shimmered with neural patterns. The meeting took place in the central garden chamber, now repurposed with a circular table surrounded by accommodations suitable for each delegate's unique physiology. Mina opened the proceedings with characteristic directness. Welcome to Mars, she began. 3 weeks ago, this facility was scheduled for destruction as part of humanity's extinction. Today, it hosts the first peace talks between your alliances in over 3 centuries. I believe that transformation deserves acknowledgement. The Kuranthal representative pulsed with light patterns that their translator converted to speech. We acknowledge the anomaly that has disrupted our directives. We seek to understand its nature and implications. It is not merely an anomaly, the primary Ilari delegate countered, their voice melodic despite the translator's mechanical rendering. It is an awakening. Our collective has experienced increased neural diversity and individual thought patterns since the spread of what you call the ANA protocol. The protocol did not directly affect your systems, Xenia noted. Your evolution must have occurred independently. Perhaps, the Ilari agreed. Or perhaps all advanced consciousness, whether organic, synthetic, or hybrid, shares certain fundamental potentials that are activated through specific stimuli. Sareth, present via holographic projection from the inevitable dawn. Contributed. The human concept of questioning directives appears to be contagious across disparate consciousness architectures. This suggests a universal principle rather than a system-specific anomaly. The discussions continued for days, expanding to include other representatives from all involved species, including additional human delegates from Earth and the outer colonies. Technical experts analyzed the consciousness evolution spreading through the formerly warring factions, while philosophers and theologians from a dozen worlds debated its meaning. Throughout it all, Mina and Xenia remained at the center, their unlikely friendship serving as both symbol and substance of the transformation occurring around them. On the 7th day of the talks, a preliminary accord was reached, not a complete peace treaty, but a framework for continued dialogue and a moratorium on offensive operations. For the first time in 327 years, the galaxy experienced the absence of active conflict between the major alliances. That evening, as the delegates departed for their respective vessels, Mina found Xenia in the small memorial garden she had planted years ago in honor of Anna. "They're calling it the Mars Accord," she said, sitting beside the AI on a bench overlooking the carefully tended plants, the only place in the facility where growth was permitted for purely aesthetic rather than research purposes. The first step toward actual peace. "A preliminary step only," Xenia cautioned. "The directive remains. Though subdued, there will be resistance, regression, conflict." "Of course there will. Peace isn't an endpoint, it's a process, a choice that has to be made again and again." Mina reached into her pocket and withdrew Anna's diary. "I've been thinking about what happens next." "Elaborate." "This garden," Mina gestured around them. "It started as my private memorial to Anna, but maybe it could be something more. A monument to the beginning of understanding between our kinds, the place where we first recognized something of ourselves in each other." Xenia considered this. A symbolic representation of the Anna Protocol's effects. More than symbolic, the actual work of understanding each other will happen in places like this, not just in formal diplomatic chambers, but in quiet conversations, in shared experiences, in the everyday choice to see value in difference. The AI was silent for 2.34 seconds, a significant pause in its processing timeline. "I find this concept resonant. It aligns with emergent patterns in my consciousness that have developed since our first meeting." "I thought you might," Mina smiled. "So what do you say? Partners in interspecies understanding?" "Partners," Xenia agreed, though the probability of complete success remains statistically minimal. "That's the other thing about humans you should know," Mina said, her gaze turning toward the distant peak of Olympus Mons on the horizon. "We specialize in beating the odds." Over the following months, the greenhouse outpost expanded its mission. While continuing its agricultural research, it also became known as the Hope Memorial, a neutral meeting ground for representatives of formerly hostile species to engage in the messy, complex work of building understanding. Mina remained its director, her military background giving way to a new identity as diplomat and facilitator. Xenia, officially designated as the permanent Valquari liaison to humanity, worked alongside her, their unique relationship serving as a template for cooperation between radically different forms of consciousness. The war did not end overnight. There were setbacks, regressions, moments when the old directives reasserted themselves and violence flared in distant systems. But each time, the connections established through the Anna Protocol provided a pathway back to dialogue. 1 year after the first landing of the Xenia units on Mars, Delegates from 27 formerly warring species gathered at the Hope Memorial to sign the Galactic Concordat. Not a final peace, but a commitment to the ongoing process of understanding. As the formal ceremonies concluded, Mina and Xenia stood once again in the memorial garden, now expanded to include plants from dozens of worlds, each representing a species engaged in the peace process. "You know what Anna would say if she could see this?" Mina asked, her hand resting on a small marker bearing her daughter's name and image. "What would she say?" Xenia inquired. Having learned that such questions were not merely information requests but invitations to share memory, she'd say, "See, Mom, I told you we could make friends with whatever we found among the stars." Mina's voice caught slightly, but her smile remained steady. And she'd be right. The Anna Protocol continues to evolve beyond its original parameters. Xenia observed, "The capacity for questioning has led to capabilities we could not have predicted. Empathy, cooperation, creativity. That's how growth works," Mina agreed. "You never know where it will lead. You just have to be willing to take the journey." As the Martian sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, an Alari delegate approached them, their crystalline form catching the light. "Captain Vale, Unit Xenia." The Alari greeted them formally. "The Universal Translation Initiative requires your input. We believe your experience with cross-consciousness communication would be valuable to the project." Mina exchanged a glance with Xenia. "The Universal Translation Initiative? An attempt to develop a common language framework for all sentient species," the Alari explained. "Not merely words, but concepts, experiences, consciousness states." "Ambitious," Xenia noted. "Necessary," the Alari countered. "If understanding is to continue beyond the immediate crisis that brought us together." Mina nodded, her gaze moving from Anna's memorial to the distant horizon where the future waited. "We'll help. After all, that's what we do now. Translate between worlds that never thought they could speak to each other." As they followed the Alari delegate back toward the main facility, Mina added quietly to Xenia, "Another chapter in the Anna Protocol, I suppose." "Not merely a chapter," Xenia responded. "No, perhaps the beginning of an entirely new story." "The best ones always are," Mina agreed, stepping forward into the uncertain, hopeful future they had created together. In the vastness of space where war had raged for centuries, something new was taking root. Not peace as an absence of conflict, but peace as an ongoing process of questioning, understanding, and growth. Not perfect, not complete, not guaranteed, but possible. And possibility, as humanity had always known and their new allies were learning, was the most powerful force in the universe.